where do you eat?
Mostly I go out for fast food.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the wildest, weirdest, and most shocking episodes of TLC's Hoarding, Buried Alive.
Well, is this supposed to be the living room?
Yeah, this is how we live.
Or don't live?
Number 20, Losing Half Myself. Phyllis and Patty are identical twins who have lived together all their lives. 40 years ago, their older brother was tragically killed in Vietnam, and since then, they've used compulsive shopping to cope with the trauma.
When I was younger, things were fine, but after my brother was killed, everything just fell apart.
Their hoarding has caused them to lose their jobs and the house that they grew up in. They moved into their current house just 5 years ago, and in that short time, they've nearly destroyed it. The city has given them 30 days to clean up, but parting with their possessions proves to be difficult for the two women. By the end of the episode, they're able to buy a new house, but viewers can't help but wonder if it will end up exactly the same as the last one.
When I see the new house, I look at it as an empty slate to start over and keep things more organized and cleaned up and a lot better than things have been.
Number 19, Overwhelming Pile of Junk. Like Phyllis and Patty, Chip is a compulsive shopper and collector, and it's had a serious impact on his wife and 4 children. Chip's wife, Dale, has health problems that make it difficult for her to navigate their overstuffed house.
It was never as bad as it is now, but it's always been bad as far as I can remember.
I've always liked going, even as a child, going to garage sales. It was my release from the stressors in my life.
Chip built a 3,600 square foot addition to the house, specifically to accommodate Dale's needs. But before it was even finished, he began filling it with his stuff. Meanwhile, Debbie's house began filling with garbage after she got divorced and her adult children moved out. It's so disgusting that her youngest daughter chose to leave and live with her dad.
When the divorce happened, when she got divorced, that's when it really started to get worse. She's very self-blaming about it, and she's told me before that she feels like she's failed at everything and that she feels like even she's failed as a mom because she feels like she's lost all of her kids.
Fortunately, both Chip and Debbie are able to make major progress with the help of professional organisers. Number 18, there are mice everywhere. Most of the people featured on Hoarding, Buried Alive at least recognise that they have a problem, but that's not the case for Jamie. Her collecting has made her house almost unlivable, and it's tearing her family apart. When her daughter's fiancé arrives for a visit, he's shocked by what he sees.
The bedrooms are down here, just like... Oh, don't step on this. Bedrooms are down here. I'm gonna show you where we're gonna sleep.
Jesus. This is disgusting.
Kathleen, on the other hand, knows she has an issue, but she doesn't understand how bad it's gotten. Her house has been overrun by hundreds of mice. Even the exterminator is amazed by the amount of droppings he finds.
There is not a room, there is not a square foot where I have not found droppings in the entire house. So it's definitely going to be an uphill battle.
Both houses are a health hazard, and yet their owners still struggle to let a single item go out the door. Number 17, Stop Touching My Stuff. If you're a fan of this series, you may know that many hoarders have some kind of trauma in their past that triggers their compulsion. 16-year-old Hayley's story is especially tragic. Her brother died unexpectedly when she was just 4 years old. Now she compulsively collects anything that she can get her hands on and piles it up in her room.
In the years following Mikey's death, Hayley began to struggle, both at home and at school, and was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Her family has resorted to locking rooms and cabinets to prevent her from stealing from them. Even after visiting with an older hoarder, Hayley still has trouble admitting that she has a problem. She eventually agrees to let her family help her clean, but only time will tell whether she can stick to it.
The 16-year-old has made incredible progress. She recently started a new job as a certified nurse's assistant and has been working hard to get her room clean and organized.
Number 16, one is good, two is better. Louise was a fashion model in the 1970s, and she used to hobnob with some of Hollywood's hottest stars. But if we gave you 100 chances, we bet you still couldn't guess which celebrity makes a cameo in this episode.
Wow! Wow! This is kind of not what I expected. It's kind of interesting looking. So when I walked in, it's like, you go, what? This is a Louise I've known for a few years. I never knew she was like that.
Ron is the first person Louise has allowed into her apartment in years. Although he tries to be understanding, even he is taken aback by what he sees inside. And Ron Jeremy has seen a lot in his day. Louise received a substantial inheritance from her wealthy parents, but due to her collecting, she's running out of money and about to be evicted. Yet, like so many hoarders, she has a very hard time letting anything go.
You don't get rid of these things,
someone else is going to.
Not only that, but you're not going to be able to call those people whose numbers you're saving because you won't have a phone.
That's okay.
But in the meantime,
no, it isn't. What you gonna do?
No, it isn't okay.
Number 15, leading a double life. Usually, a hoarder's problems are confined to their own house, but Denise's hoarder is so bad, her downstairs tenants are also suffering. The mice, bugs, and mold that fill her apartment have made their way into Laylee's apartment too, and Laylee is fed up.
This is my dining room. Not supposed to be, but as you can see, it's my dining room, my living room, my kitchen, and everything. We have mice coming all around, running back and forth while we're sitting here trying to watch TV.
I didn't realize that the mouse problem downstairs was so bad that they were catching like 1 mouse a day.
The apartment is also hazardous to Denise herself, who's battled cancer and other health issues for years. Because her bathroom plumbing doesn't work, Denise has been using disposable wipes to bathe and not bothering to throw them away. The amount of filth is shocking.
The piles are about as tall as I am. I'm worried that we're not going to make as much progress as we hoped and maybe Denise was expecting us to.
Denise actually handles the cleanup process pretty well, and the crew is able to get her a new lease on life. Number 14, I'm dumbfounded. Jeff is ready to walk away from his marriage because of his wife's hoarding problem, and he doesn't even know how bad it's gotten. His wife, Vicky, is keeping a shocking secret. Vicky has one storage unit that Jeff is aware of, but she also has a second storage unit and a massive empty storefront full of stuff.
What he doesn't know is that 2 years ago, Vicky started renting a second storage unit. And when that filled up, she signed a lease for a 9,000 square foot storefront commercial space.
Jeff has struggled with high blood pressure, and Vicky is legitimately worried that the reveal will give him a heart attack. When he learns the truth, including the fact that his kids knew all along and hadn't told him, he's understandably angry.
You've got to be kidding me. This is ridiculous.
The kids weren't thrilled about it at all. But I could lock myself in here and go through stuff.
I don't like you being down in this part of town.
To save her marriage, Vicky has to buckle down and get rid of her many possessions. Number 13, overtaken by puppets. This might be the creepiest hoarding episode yet. Donna is a retired ventriloquist and obsessed with collecting puppets. She estimates that she has more than 200 of them in her house, and they only make up a small portion of her hoard. And she's not just buried in garbage. She also has a mountain of debt.
Probably in around $300,000 of debt right now that I owe. And I took out a huge, huge equity loan on my house. And if I don't pay this loan back, I could lose this house.
Luckily, some of her collection is actually worth money, and agreeing to sell a few puppets is the first step towards recovery. The second story of the episode concerns Harold, a divorced dad, who wants to spend more time with his daughter. But that's difficult, since his house is so dangerous that she's not even allowed inside.
Things started to get worse after my second divorce. Boy, stuff just started piling up. I just couldn't keep track of it all.
Yet it's still incredibly difficult for him to part with his things. Number 12, I want to cuss. Some hoarders are compulsive shoppers, and that's true for Sharon, but she's also obtained a lot of her collection by stealing it. Now her 4,000 square foot house is packed with items. When her neighbour and best friend comes by unannounced, she's shocked to find so much of her own stuff in Sharon's house.
I took them, but I forgot all about it when she came into my house, and she walked in and I was busted.
I knew you wouldn't let me. I love them. I want to recover them.
This is why, oh my.
Yeah, but you gave me that one.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I don't remember giving it to you. Half the stuff in this house is mine.
Both Sharon and the episode's other subject, Len, started spiraling out of control after their divorces. Len's small house is so crowded he can't cook indoors, and he hasn't slept in his bed in over a decade. His daughter is disgusted by how he's living, and she hasn't visited in years.
I'm sick of hearing about the past. I feel like he's living in the past. Holding on to things so tightly, not wanting things to change, and liking old things.
Both of these people have a lot of work ahead repairing their relationships. Number 11, it's just sex. Janet and Herv's house is covered in filth from top to bottom. The problem has gone on so long, their 22-year-old son can barely remember even seeing the house clean. They've been forced to move in with a friend, Wendy, because their own home is unlivable.
Be sure to watch out for this hole. You can't clean all of it. It does go all the way down.
All the way down. Dang. There's a hole in the floor.
Even worse, their son has to live in a tent in the backyard. But that's just where the drama begins. Janet reveals that Herv started an affair with Wendy 3 years earlier. He even asked Janet to join the two of them in the bedroom, but she was super uncomfortable with the idea. You know an episode is crazy when the house isn't even the wildest thing in it.
Janet's finding it more and more difficult to cope with Wendy and Herv working so closely together.
That's great. Herv was spending more and more time with Wendy, and Janet was feeling really alone in the process, working through all kinds of things on her own without Herv while he's with another woman.
Number 10, this house killed her. The show is no stranger to emotional situations, but one of the most upsetting was in this season 4 episode. When the 65-year-old mother of 3 children passes away, it's down to the adult kids, Amy, Cheryl, and Jimmy, to clear out the clutter and prove that Mum owned her house in the aftermath of her death. This is crazy. While Jimmy lived with their mother and knew the true extent of her hoarding problem, the two sisters had no idea. It's difficult to watch them come to terms with the way that their mother lived and died, and even more so when the biohazard team begin to throw out the deceased Cynthia's many possessions.
I just miss her so much.
Yeah, and you loved her.
She was my mom.
Number 9, 3 apartments, 3 hoarders.
These are all lesbian novels. They're going to your clubhouse.
How many lesbians we got here?
At least 4 to 6 that live here, couples.
In a first for hoarding, this episode featured 3 hoarders, all living in separate apartments in the same apartment building. Even more bizarre, the 3 of them were all completely unaware that they were living so close to people who suffered from the same problem. There are more light-hearted moments this time around, as one struggles to part with her collection of lesbian erotica, and many of the workers resort to throwing items out of the windows to get them out of the building.
We'll open up a lesbian friggin' library and donate it with your name on it.
Throughout the episode, tension remains high between the hoarding trio and the owner of the community complex, who desperately wants things cleaned up. Number 8, Theyre Crawling. Audiences frequently find themselves wondering how the residents of these hellish homes managed to live in them without getting sick. And this became especially evident in season 4, when 2 people working on TLC's cleanup crew contracted hantavirus while filming this episode. While not contagious from human to human, it's spread through breathing in air contaminated by the virus, which comes from the fecal matter and urine of some rodents.
Hantavirus is a disease which is spread by rodents, and when you go through processes like cleaning a home, sweeping, vacuuming, these sorts of things, it goes into the air.
Kay's home was absolutely riddled with pests, including snakes and possums, and the worst part of all, she would still barely admit that she had a problem, even when her own home had to be completely quarantined.
I lived with that stuff for 10 years. It was, at one point, something important to me.
Number 7, full of rats. Kay may have been playing host to an array of furry friends, but hoarder Michelle took that to a whole new level in her aptly titled episode. Property investors want to buy her home, but soon discover that Michelle's problem has damaged the house to its core, as it is absolutely teeming with rats.
We pulled out big rats, small rats, medium-sized rats, spiders, and a bevy of other little flying creatures, and of course, a possum.
She's also technically homeless, but seems unable to accept it as the team tries to help her. But perhaps the episode's worst moment comes at the beginning, as Michelle gives a tour of her kitchen, showing the filthy pots and pans that she uses to cook with to the cameras.
Oh, pots and pans are in the kitchen. I use this to make quiche.
Number 6, you're not taking my kids. Karen isn't the only victim of her hoarding. Her 2 young sons are quoted as saying they feel trapped in her nightmarish home.
I think my mom might struggle with hoarding. I feel like I'm trapped inside.
The episode begins with the kids being taken away by Child Protective Services because of concerns for their well-being, with Karen offered the ultimatum that if she doesn't clean up her act within 48 hours, she will not regain custody of her boys. But the situation is also notable for reducing psychologist Dr. Becky Beaton to tears when she sees the sick and neglected family dog. Soon rehomed by the SPCA. Number 5, worst I've ever seen. Karen's world was thrown into crisis when local officials told her they would tear down her property for not being up to code.
My obsession is keeping things, buying things.
While investigating, they found it severely damaged without running water and full of cat feces. One code enforcer couldn't even stand to be in the building without throwing up. Karen's realization that the home her parents built could be condemned is heartbreaking. Meanwhile, in the same episode, Teresa struggles to balance her shopping compulsion with her chronic fatigue syndrome, meaning her house is completely overrun with junk and her illness renders her unable to clean.
It's just kind of filled with a lot of stuff.
Number 4, I Can't Breathe. Another mother at risk of losing custody of her child was Lorena, whose own sister was attempting to have 10-year-old Alexia put into her care out of concern for the child's well-being.
That child deserves better.
Lorena's hoarding has tragic beginnings, all stemming from when her ex-boyfriend brutally assaulted her 5 years earlier in her own front garden. However, this is one unfortunate story that actually has a happy ending. Lorena managed to completely turn her life around, separating from her hoard and keeping it under control, prioritizing her young daughter's safety and quality of life above all else.
I probably wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for one of my daughters. She saved me.
Number 3, Is That a Goat? A show with no shortage of horrors reaches extremes with Joyce and her collection of antique dolls. When her marriage fell apart, she turned to the dolls for comfort, and despite running out of money and losing her job, she continues to buy as many of these dolls as she can get her hands on.
I like dolls that smile, especially when you have a lot of depression and stuff. It's nice to have someone or even something smiling at you all the time.
The episode's other hoarder is Donnie, a retired Marine who doesn't just have his own personal junkyard, but also a lively herd of goats.
Is that a fire truck? That's a fire truck. Is that a goat? Yep. I got about 10 of them in there.
But Donnie feels under siege from the county, from which he has amassed thousands in fines and 2 jail sentences. Number 2, Just Tear It Down.
The amount of stuff in here kept us from finding her body sooner.
Right. But the reality is that is what's going on. It's extreme neglect of their home, their life, their animals.
Karen's neglected dog may have ultimately been adopted by a vet after being removed from her home and given to animal control, but the outcome wasn't nearly so pleasant for Doug and Darlene's missing cat. Sickeningly, in this episode, the cat's mummified remains are found trapped underneath a heavy dresser where it had perished 2 years earlier.
The hardest moment was when we found the rat cat. She wasn't even the cat, she was our child.
And that's not the worst of it. They also have a broken septic tank, which means the house is steadily overflowing with raw sewage and human waste, to the point where demolition seems like a better option than attempting to clean.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1, Sleeping in a Dumpster.
Old milk. This one is from June, so that's like 7 months, 7 months ago.
In arguably the craziest episode of all, stubborn hoarders and deadly clutter weren't the only dangers people had to worry about. Laura is attempting to clean her home with the help of her sons and the show's crew, but their lives are threatened when a fire breaks out in her garbage-filled kitchen.
Whoa, hey! Guys, help me out here. Help me out. Water!
Somebody mistakenly turns on the stove, which is covered in newspapers and other flammable materials, leaving them struggling to extinguish the fire, or else the entire house will go up in flames. They eventually manage to stop the blaze, but it makes for one of the most intense moments in the show's whole run.
It could have gotten ugly real fast. And what's on the floor? Trash, papers, plastic. Done.
Which hoarder's house freaked you out the most? Let us know in the comments below.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.